Good morning. I'm absolutely delighted to be speaking with Mr. Rod McGeoch, a person and a career that has done so much over the last 50 years in business, in the field of law and the profession surrounding law, also sports administration. A most warm welcome to you. Rod, your CV is incredible, and if I can let our listeners just pick up some of the things, you have been exemplary in the areas that I've spoken about, particularly well known in Australia and the world in terms of Olympic bids, particularly the 2000 bid. You're chairman of a wide range of major corporations and also past chairman of Cause Chambers Westgarth, one of Australia's largest firms. When I look at all the other boards that you've been on, it truly is remarkable, particularly as a director of Ramsay Healthcare, chairman of Sky City Entertainment, MediaWorks, two major New Zealand companies, an honorary chairman of the Trans-Tasman Business Circle, and immediate past chairman of Australia's New Zealand Leadership Forum. You are currently trustee and deputy chairman of Sydney Cricket Ground and Sports Grounds Trust. You received an AO for the work that you've done in so many areas, particularly in the areas to and for the legal profession in New South Wales and Australia. It is my pleasure to be able to ask you to tell us about the world in which you continue to do and the energy and the influence that you bring. Good morning to you, Rod.
Yes, good morning, Jim, and thank you for that introduction. I'm here because I'm chairman of the on this CapTech conference at the end of the year, and we have very much an international focus. We want delegates to be coming, as they have done over the previous 3 years, and I hope that in our conversation we can really explain to viewers that we are talking about a very sophisticated economy, a sophisticated market here in Australia. I mean, for example, today we have the fourth highest amount of funds available for investment in the world. And soon it will be the third biggest amount of funds for investment in the world. Now, this arises out of our compulsory insurance scheme and matters of that kind. But this is a very sophisticated market here. Now, the conference has a bias, if you like, to some extent on private equity. I started my legal career acting for people who were lending money to other people who were borrowing it to buy their homes. And so we had private capital very active in a small law firm that made it a very, very lucrative law firm. And of course, relationships are everything in this business. And the better we did with our mortgage practice, the more people invested in it, the more people came to borrow from it. And, you know, when you've got a government, and particularly banks, who might only let you own your own home in terms of lending money to you, as it was way back then, and we would lend to you and you could buy 5 homes. And so I started there. Where am I sitting today in the world of private equity? I chair Vantage Private Equity. We are on our 6th fund in Australia. Everyone has grown bigger than the last, and we are a fund of funds. So I get to have presented to me by all the other private equity funds in Australia their latest deals because they want our money. And we put funds into other people's funds. And it's extraordinary to hear what people are doing with private equity money in Australia. My last presentation, which was a fund called Potentia, who came to say, look, we're raising 750 million. We'd love to have 30 million of Vantage's money. And I go, well, what are you going to do with it? Potentia does nothing but invest in world-class international technology. That's the first thing. The second thing is it will only buy a business if it can have 51% of it or more. And thirdly, to my surprise, they have now opened an office in Japan and see huge opportunities investing in technology in Japan. Why? Because Australia is actually more advanced than Japan is in this world, which came as a big surprise to me. So I've lived this journey with great partnerships associated with it. And I find the world of investment of capital, getting the returns, providing outcomes that are positive for everybody involved as a very exciting place and space to spend my time.
Rod, and you bring so much energy, enthusiasm just listening to you now. In November, when CapTech is highlighting bringing people together, I'm just wanting our listeners to understand what can they gain from that and what can they learn.
Well, of course, it won't only be Australians in the audience, but there'll be a predominance of them. And what they can learn is about the opportunities in our market, and they're endless. I mean, we talked earlier in my introduction about the Olympic Games.
Mm.
2032, Brisbane holds the third Olympic Games in Australia inside 60 odd years. And most countries haven't ever held an Olympic Games. And the opportunities that spring off that in the building of infrastructure, technology, development of sport, and so on are just mind boggling. Now, 2036, the understanding is that India is bidding for those particular games and is preparing their bid now. We know that Los Angeles has them in 2028 and Brisbane in 2032. Now, I first started on this journey in the early 1990s for Sydney, and since winning for Sydney, I've advised Athens on a winning bid, London on a winning bid. I've advised Thailand in the preparation of a bid, Rio's bid, Cape Town preparing for a bid. In Australia, there's an enormous experience in the business of sport, from television to infrastructure, to the development of athletes, to drug control. We've got huge amounts to share, and we're very much hoping that a good part of our audience at CapTech this year will be coming from India, and there they are bidding for an Olympic Games. They're in a country that knows more about the Olympic Games than most do.
And what you and I have noticed in particular, because you've been involved with CapTech and the interaction of a whole range of stakeholders, is the increasing number of people who are wanting to be there, which is really fantastic. One of the things that's very important, particularly at your level and your level of experience, is red flags. When looking for or providing capital, one of the things that you are very good at is highlighting those red flags that people need to be aware of in their transactions.
Yes, well, look, if you think about bidding for an Olympic Games, the organisations that don't get there are the ones that can't convince the judges that they're the complete deal. So the red flags go up. They've either haven't had experience before, they've got no real culture in sport. And if you turn it around to any other kind of investment, excuse me, we spoke about a long period on the board of Ramsay Healthcare. And, you really need to live and breathe that whole world of health, the relationship between government, private enterprise, doctors, what are the latest techniques. Anybody that doesn't do their due diligence and work out whether there are any red flags or not shouldn't be using other people's money for investment. It's as simple as that.
Well, it's interesting because one of your very strong comments is the misalignment, if you like, of the vision and the funds that tend to try to attract each other. You're very big on drilling down on those things, that misalignment.
Yeah, well, it's all very well to have a vision, but you've got to convince me that you've got a plan to deliver it. Australia had two wonderfully famous explorers in the early part of its history called Burke and Wills. And they had a great vision about walking from one side of the country to the other, and they had no plan, and they both died trying to do it. It's just, you've got to convince me that you've got a plan as well as a vision for me to invest. So when I'm sitting there, Advantage Private Equity, and the fund is sitting in front of me wanting my money, yes, I want to hear about the vision of the fund, but I also want to know the plan that makes sure that my people's money that's getting invested is looked after and has got a very, very high chance of being successfully invested.
So clearly, and because of your legal background and international experience in the law, clarity is critical.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You can't come to the table of a fund and want their money without that complete package of what's our vision, what's our plan, who are the people that are going to deliver on it, who have you got to convince, the stakeholders and people that you've got to uh, build their confidence in you before they'll let you do the deal. If you think in terms of Olympics, there's 120 votes. You've got to get half of them. And you've got 3 years to build a relationship that in the end says, I want those people to run my event for me. That's the ultimate decision they're going to make. And, one of the great mistakes is thinking, well, I've got the money, so, everybody will want to talk to me. Now, I can give you a classic example of misjudgment of what we're talking about. When Melbourne bid for the Games of 1996, they had an excellent set of infrastructure and so on, the government support, and we were up against Atlanta and various other countries. On the day of the vote, Melbourne, with the Prime Minister present, went to Tokyo, absolutely convinced that they'd won, and they got 16 votes out of 90 and came fourth. And you'd say to yourself, how did a group of leading businessmen not see that they weren't making real strides with the target audience, the stakeholders, your partner in the games? And you've got to be able to pull off all those different steps, including building relationships of trust, because that's what's happening here. You're asking people for their money. They've got to be able to trust you with it and be convinced you'll know what to do with it.
Rod, if I can just say by way of a very quick summary, I noticed very much, particularly last year, the amount of people that gravitated to you and others, but particularly you, wanting to share information, obtain information. That's one of the takeouts that I've seen with regards to being there at CapTech. Your thoughts on that?
Well, it's an extraordinarily vibrant 3 days or so of days and evenings of this opportunity to share your stories and experiences. One of the most interesting parts of CapTech's program is we run these sessions in which people who are looking for capital address the audience about what is their business proposition. And then we turn it around and have the people that have got the capital get up there and say, look, I listened to you and I think you need to do X, Y, and Z, or I like it or not. And this is done completely unrehearsed and with no inhibitions on either side. And it is wonderful to see how capital is thinking on its feet and how people that are trying to sell a deal are thinking on their feet.
I'm excited by just your summary of that. And to align with that also, Rod, is how the executive of CapTech and you and your think tank group, which are an amazing group of people, are now putting people together in such a way that they're able to genuinely, over that time, meet with each other and further the journey of dialogue.
Yes, I mean, Jim, there's no doubt that the advisory board that supports CapTech involves some of the leading figures in the country of Australia. You've got the chief executive of the Arab Bank sitting there with his footprint all over the Middle East and Australian banking. Sally Lone has joined us. She's the chair of tourism for New South Wales, the biggest state in Australia. She's soon to become the chairman of one of our largest insurance companies. She was the chief executive of the Financial Services Council of Australia. So, all the regulatory part of taking people's money and investing it and all those sorts of things. And we're able to pick up the phone and basically speak to anybody in the business world of Australia and ask them to come and present. And that's what we do.
I think it's truly amazing. And as I say, that conversation and the executive and you and think tank have orchestrated very carefully how people can just share a cup of tea, a glass of wine, and really develop those relationships, because you talk about trust as being critical in the equation of success.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, it's everything in relationships. And one of the beauties of the CapTech conference is the opportunity for every moment you're awake to be mixing in these groups and sharing your experiences and getting that information that helps you when you go back home, understanding different cultures in the world, talking to all the different private equity funds in Australia, whose leadership comes and where they're up to. And I mean, when I sit as their chairman of Vantage, listening to private equity funds bidding for our money, it's one of the most exhilarating parts of my day to hear the intellectual breadth and the
Yes,
opportunities that are out there in Australia and New Zealand and Asia and so on. I feel that I feel I should be paying to be there. I'm learning so much myself.
that is fantastic. Rod, can I, again, on behalf of the Australian economy, the world global economy in which we live now, thank you personally, but also professionally on behalf of, as I said, groups and organisations that have benefited by your wisdom, your insight, and to have you as chairman of this event and other associated organisations is a credit to you, and it's a credit to Captech to have someone of your calibre with others to enhance the lives of so many people. We live in a global world, and you certainly have lived and given every attention to helping people become better people personally and also in business. Thank you.
Jim, it's great. I look forward to seeing everybody in November in Sydney. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Rod. Ladies and gentlemen, what an incredible person. His life has been filled with lots of activities which has benefited so many people. In my humble opinion, and I'm saying this publicly, you would not get a person who really lives what we are doing at CapTech 25, bringing people together, sharing resources, and building relationships on trust and building on the business principles of success and sharing that with all parties. Please be there. There'll be further information coming out to encourage and entice you for you to satisfy your goals and objectives in the world in which you live. Have a great day.